there's people here, but they come and go. There's a core group of people that are here all the time, but there's other people that come and go, and I just keep myself to myself because there's language barriers and stuff. I've watched all the business decline over the last 5 years to the point where places are just going under. They're opening up and they're losing money every day. And that's had a direct effect on my ability to work, combined with the fact that nothing seems to have worked properly at all since I put my head firmly above the parapet and started screaming from the rooftops in I was already screaming from the rooftops, but particularly about what I was screaming about in 2020, 2021 and 22. Nothing seems to work properly, and it causes paranoid thoughts like, oh God, targeted, and these things aren't by chance or happenstance, they're intentional. Strange shit going on with my equipment and with just strange shit going on, man, that can't, when you try and explain it to anybody, they think you're fucking crazy. They think you're just a paranoid nut job conspiracy theorist. So my frustrations are here with my immediate experience here, more to my lack of funds. So I just can't do anything. I'm stuck where I am.
Fair enough. I can completely relate in terms of both things, having a lack of funds and indeed having equipment that does weird things that you wouldn't expect it to do, especially when dealing with YouTube. So yeah, I can completely relate.
And I feel so honoured to be on the panel with you, Nathan, because while I've been kind of trying to get on with trying to keep standing, being a mum, living my life, trying to work and be a mum at the same time, I've kind of not paid attention to the community online. And when I came back and had actually a little bit of extra time to spend doing things that I love doing, like making content, back in January, obviously it was brought to my attention by Rich that quite a big swathe of the communities just decided to kind of go back to the ball. Now, I as Rich will tell you, I've been under a rock with a lot of things because time's been my biggest constraint. I've not really been able to keep up. Didn't really know there was a trip. Didn't really know anything. Wasn't really paying attention to any of it. But what did I miss? What's happened?
As in, what happened in December?
Sorry, go on.
Okay, so you're talking about TFE, I'd assume.
The whole them going back to the ball. I'm just confused.
Will Duffy and what happened afterwards, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like people that we really wouldn't have expected, like Paul, what's his name?
I was flabbergasted with the amount of about-face turning that's going on. For what?
I mean, I can only break down the arguments that they had, if that's what you want me to do.
Yes, please. I wouldn't really listen to anyone else other than you, and I haven't had time to kind of catch up with everything, so I just feel like somehow by the grace of God you're here, and I'm just very grateful to kind of get your perspective of it, because I'm lost.
Okay, so before they went, we broke down on the show the two affirming the consequent formal logical fallacies that are being employed in a false dichotomy. So on the one side, who's off mute? One of you's off mute. I can hear myself echoing through one of your microphones.
Do you want me to mute up? I don't mind muting up.
Oh,
Whoever.
yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
it's just really distracting. So on the one side, you've got the claimed flat Earth suggestion that if you go down to Antarctica and then see a 24-hour sun, it will disprove the azimuthal equidistant North Pole centric globe projection. And then from the globe side, obviously the opposite of that. If you go down and do see a 24-hour sun, then it would confirm that the Earth's a sphere. That's their two positions stacked up in false dichotomy. So we pointed out the affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy from both sides, the use of flat Earth measurements to produce both sides claim to be models, neither of which are strictly speaking models, but that's what we broke down prior to them going to Antarctica. When they allegedly got to Antarctica, one of their participants actually phoned me up live while they were down there measuring Earth flat with elevation angle measurements to the sun for a 24-hour period. And that particular individual was told, whilst measuring Earth flat, that they were measuring Earth flat, and their response was to ask me where the guns were, based on a comment I'd made 8 years ago about being stopped if you tried to go to Antarctica. Now, just so that bit's wrapped up as well, coincidentally, as in nothing to do with their particular visit, somebody else attempted to, or did, land on Antarctica and were quickly escorted away at gunpoint after the fact. So this little red herring was just utilised to distract away from the fact that they were measuring Earth flat for 24 hours with an elevation angle. Before I move on, do you know what an elevation angle is?
No.
Okay, so an elevation angle
the
is...
elevation angle for where you're taking the measurement from.
So it's just a line along the ground. That's one part of the angle, and the other one's a line up to the sun. That's it. It's very basic. Elevation meaning from the surface. That's what elevation is. Angle means two straight lines meeting at a vertex. In this case, the sun being the thing that they're measuring for the 24-hour period. So they, that's to say the group of people in Antarctica, measured Earth flat for 24 hours, if they're actually in Antarctica as alleged to be. I think it's your guest holding stuff up that might be off mute. Can you pop yourself on mute, my friend?
I think it's Chief. What are you showing us there, Chief?
A melted brick.
It's causing feedback.
Oh, right.
A melted brick. That my girl made me that. She calls me her red brick dick.
Okay. Sorry, man. We're just going to mute up because he's getting some feedback. So,
all right, I'll mute me.
So they alleged that they would prove or disprove an alleged flat Earth map. Now, to get to the nub of your question, why have people turned back to the globe? Well, in some respects, they were led by one individual, Jaron Campanella, who can only be described as being very shilly in terms of his behaviour for a few different reasons. The first being that, and you may or may not be aware of this, about 9 years ago, I personally led the Tracking the Sun on a Flat Earth Live 2 sessions of 24 hours of observing the sun across the plane. And in that process, the azimuthal equidistant North Pole centric globe projection was debunked together with Jaron Campanella's assistance. So he partook in that particular event, and at the end was acutely aware that the azimuthal equidistant North Pole centric globe projection wasn't correct. It didn't match the observations that we were making. Even though that's the case, he then ploughed on for the next few years, allegedly adhering to it as though it was a flat Earth model that could be debunking a flat Earth when measuring Earth flat for 24 hours with the sun and elevation angles. So all very suspicious in terms of at least Jaron Campanella's alleged departure from a flat Earth that he coincidentally conceded just before turning back to the globe. So our argumentation at the time was that Earth is obviously measured flat, one of the examples being elevation angles themselves, as pointed out to the participants of TFE while they were making the measurements by me personally live as they were doing it. Jaron's response, quote, "Earth is like a Home Depot." That is to say, Earth is measured flat on the local scale. Now, this concession didn't seem to make any difference to him leading quite a number of people back onto the ball, including but not limited to Paul on the Plane and Patricia Steer, along with several others. Now, the ticker tape parade that was offered to the Antarctic travellers was given by those individuals, and all suggestions of a debunking of an already debunked azimuthal equidistant projection were ignored. So it seems like it was preordained that these individuals were amongst us to gather up support to then lead people back onto the ball at a predetermined date, in this case after TFE. The conclusion from our side, who stuck to our guns, no pun intended, was that, well, Earth's still being measured flat there, and your journey to the Antarctic region involved being on a plane and flying in straight and level flight, as documented in the pitch data from the flight, which is to say you maintain altitude nose up with respect to the horizon, and the black box records your parallel flight measured from sea level. That is to say, Earth is negotiated or navigated flat on the journey in a flat Earth direction, that's south. That's to say, pick up a compass and look at what south is. It's a flat only direction. And then when they got there, they measured the sun with respect to the surface level for part of the angle. So there's nothing really to discuss in terms of what they actually achieved. They just measured Earth flat for 24 hours, if it's true that they even went there at all. Now, just to top this off, there were several people who are still, in my mind, considered very shilly, that were describing aspects of the journey to Antarctica that had no bearing on whether or not the Earth that is spherical in their mind's eye, also created with the same flat Earth prerequisite elevation angles, would be debunked by them being inattentive televisions, using vapes, not being able to pick up snow, all kinds of crap that didn't really prove anything or disprove anything, while me personally, hence me relating to yourself when I'm talking about the suppression and weirdness that goes on, suffered the worst possible suppression on YouTube that I've experienced to date. That is to say, my engagement and publication of my material went down and down and down and down and down while I'm pointing out that they're measuring Earth flat there with conclusive evidence. So while that was going on, me and the people around me, that is, were reaching the conclusion that there was never a debate to begin with. The illusion of a debate is created by having certain individuals peddle, no offence to you, Roxy, but you did this also, the notion that Earth is not a ball, which in many ways assists our opponents because us as alleged flat earthers end up peddling the notion of how Earth is claimed to be a ball but doesn't function as a ball, when in reality the ball that is claiming to not function correctly because things like we see too far are also reliant on measuring Earth flat. So for example, when you allege that Earth should be demonstrating a hill obscuring your view at a certain distance, specifically 1.22 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, that distance is undermined by what we actually see in cameras. But the mathematics itself is also dependent on you relying on measuring the surface level for your altitude above it, and then having a parallel eye level, parallel with surface level, so you can calculate a dip angle or depression angle to a point below the surface level in maths that you've just measured flat. In other words, there are several flat Earth prerequisites in Earth curve mathematics that would require any person who used those maths to measure Earth flat to move forward and suggest they're on a ball. So, as I say, what we've been pointing out is that all measurements of Earth are flat, including but not limited to the alleged ball belief that requires you derive a radial value with minimum elevation angles to Polaris. Again, flat Earth prerequisite surface level angle-based measurements of a star called Polaris. Its minimum giving you the outside edge of a flat circle measured with that angle, called an area of equal elevation or circle of equal altitude at Polaris's minimum. So all of these requirements to create a ball depend on you measuring Earth flat first. So there was never a debate. There was just this creation of a group of people who talk about 9/11 truth, Sandy Hook, vaccinations, all manner of shit that has nothing to do with Earth measurement, so that we can be pawned scorn upon for being idiots. No offence to anybody out there who's talking about 9/11 truth, it just has nothing to do with Earth measurement. Earth measurement being a prerequisite in all instances to be flat, based on sea level, surface level, elevation angle measurements, minimums, circles of equal elevation. All of these things are flat, two-dimensional, same as directionality itself, north, south, east and west on a compass. It's all flat. and they're all used to infer that you might be on a ball surface after measuring Earth flat. So everyone measures Earth flat, and that's what we were going through when we were suffering the most suppression, and our opponents, now people like Patricia Steer, Paul and the Pain, Jaron, were saying, oh, well, if they've gone down to Antarctica and measured Earth flat for 24 hours, that means we're on a ball. Well, yeah, that's why they've gone back on the ball. So long-winded answer, but there you go.
Thank you, Nathan. Honestly, thank you. And you know what? Hindsight is a beautiful thing. And as you said, like, I did come across having to sharpen my tools as I went along the way. But as I got further along the way, I realized that my tools were far from being sharp enough to go toe to toe with people, to debate people on the finer details of things. And I thank you for pointing that out, because sometimes someone can think that they are helping a topic by getting more awareness, by simplifying things and saying things, but those statements, those quotes that, by pushing, you're not on a spinning ball, you're not on a ball, you're not on a ball, you're not on a, the globe's not a ball, the globe's not, we're not on a spinning ball, things like that can hinder people actually getting to the truth a lot quicker and easier than they should. And so, yeah, I thank you for pointing that out, because, as I said, hindsight's a beautiful thing. But the long and short of it is there's still no supporting evidence, right, for the claim that's been taught to us.
Well, the supporting evidence relies on...
Obviously, I can't keep up with things, but you still have no support for the housekeeping, I take it.
Well, the housekeeping's become redundant. I mean, I do occasionally ask it to keep the conversation going, but it is essentially redundant, because the requirement to measure Earth in the first instance means that you're going to require a surface level to measure in order to move forward with an assertion of a ball that would fail.
Mm-hmm.
But you weren't to know, so don't feel bad about it.
Myself.
Sorry,
what were you going to say? Go on.
Don't feel bad about it. It's not like we weren't all led along this particular path. That is to say, it's far easier for our opponents to argue with us if we're saying your ball should work this way, and then they can say, no, our ball should work this way, because then everyone's talking about the ball. And when you're arguing about how the ball would work, you're not paying attention to how surface level is required in every single example to be measured. Now, so long as I'm saying your ball would mean that we only see this distance, well, the distance itself is a horizontal planar measurement. So just the distance measurement itself to assert how far we should or shouldn't see on a ball assists them, because it whistles past the fact that the surface level measurement's horizontal. It's a linear, flat distance. That's why on your maps you've got a flat scale. That's why you'll measure your heights off sea level. Everything that we measure is flat. So if we're arguing about how balls don't work, that's very beneficial for the argument to take place, because nobody's focused on how Earth actually gets measured. And the ballers can utilise flat Earth prerequisite elevation angles and surface levels and horizontal distance measurements and prerequisite flat two-dimensional directionalities, north, south, east, west. They can use all of that stuff without anybody checking them on it to assert that a ball should work in a certain way. Well, we say it shouldn't work in that way. Make sense? But you're not to know.
Absolutely.
So, would you agree, Nath, that ultimately trying to fit the Earth into a model isn't necessary for us, to live? The only thing that actually matters on this Earth is the way that we behave, the way that we conduct ourselves, and the way that we treat one another, treat ourselves and treat one another. And those are all things that will be affected by how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive one another, how we perceive this Earth. The only thing that really matters about that is having an accurate it helps you to have a more accurate perception of who and what you are, right?
Yeah.
Because the whole globe theory is one that's attached to the Darwinian, theory of evolution. And if everybody knew without any doubt, with absolute certainty that we were created, then that creates that then begs the question, well, why were we created? And then we all end up looking for purpose, right? So people say, why would they lie about it? Why would they lie about what this earth is when it doesn't really matter?
Yes.
That's why it matters.
Yeah, it's
That is why it matters.
It's appeal to motivation, which is a fallacy. In terms of what Earth is, that's dictated by its measurements. Why people lie, who cares? It's an appeal to motivation fallacy. It's irrelevant. You're right. But the other thing that you said was about how we view the world as a result of heliocentrism, which is very nihilistic. If you are a insignificant speck of dust in an ever-expanding soup of nothingness, you can take a worldview that's very different in terms of how you conduct yourself in life generally. If you are appreciative that you are special, you are one of God's children, you are in a system that is made specifically for you to exist within it by God, then your outlook on life is extremely different. How you treat other people is extremely different. Whereas, like I say, in your ever-expanding soup of nothing where you're a speck of dust, what you do is pretty much inconsequential in that world.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts, Chief?
I wholeheartedly agree, Rich. I wholeheartedly agree, Nath. Really do.
My mic on here? Let's see.
Yeah, man.
Done. You hear me? You hear me?
I've muted myself. Yes, we can hear you, dude.
Oh, okay. Well, in regard to, like I just posted a comment, I just reiterate it. I see the globe model as just another layer of melt. See, I'm a meltologist. See, so I awakened, and I'm telling a story in regard to, like, I've been in them rabbit holes, the flat earth and, Martin Ledecky or whatever his name is there out of the UK, the Pied Piper, and he would hook up with these Pied Pipers like Martin and John Levi. They did all kind of little trickster stuff like propagating old images of John Levi and all kind of just dumb stuff. And my channel was taken over by China and for 2 weeks and shit, and it just drove more people to his site and stuff, and everyone was locked down, and it was just stupid, man. And a lot of people stopped associating with me because I would talk about these channels like John Levi. I followed John Levi. I only had about 20 subscribers, and I was one of them. And I was really impressed how he did things with showcasing what he's trying to say and stuff. But then I just seen through it, man. I just started seeing all the lies he would tell and the half truths, and he's supposed to be a truther, and just that whole circle of all that. You know what I mean? I think, what the hell, man? And then you read these old books, and these old books says the whole wide world is deceived. And that's one thing I'm certain of. The whole wide world is deceived. We are so deceived. We're here all trying to come up with the narrative of went down, but we can't see the obvious in front of us. Freaking melted shit everywhere. I do all kind of work. I got many hats. And I'll be in these subdivisions in the Detroit area in the underground of it, and there's melted bricks and bricks that popcorn into rocks and all kind of crazy stuff, man. And where's the explanation of that? Sunken buildings and
So there is an explanation for it. It's one that a lot of people have been reluctant to look at or to, like, they've discounted the guy. There was a big smear campaign against him, which turned a lot of people against him. I've been watching him since the beginning, since he had 1,500 subscribers. I've been watching him, and so like end of 2020, 2021, when he came on my radar, and all the red flags were there, and all of those red flags over time were taken down. I took them down because he actually ended up, once you listen to his story, it makes sense. And what he's talking about is a cyclical event. This is not a uniformitarianism reality that we're living in, it's a cataclysmic one, and there are cataclysms that come on a cyclical basis. There's undeniable data that proves the maths behind it. It's all divisible by 138. They've changed the calendars to try and hide the thing, try and hide what happened. But that explains why there's melted bricks. It explains why there's sunken buildings. It explains why entire civilizations seem to disappear and other civilizations seem to appear in history, in recorded history. And we've had everything that we've learned has been very carefully curated by a group of people, by a certain group of people that left their fingerprints on everything. And there was a time when they were proud to admit it, but now they're not so. They deny it now. But the whole point is, like I keep saying about perception, the way people see the world in their mind's eye, the mind's eye picture that you have of this world and what's going on in it, is so important. And at the moment, not one of us has actually got an accurate mind's eye picture of what's going on this earth and the people that are in it. If we were all connected in a better way, if we had an accurate perception of what was going on around us, an accurate perception of who and what we were, then in that way we would have an accurate perception of this earth and what's going on here. But because we're all so divided, and we're also, and because the way that we've been educated has been so imbalanced. We started off on a bad foot. We started off in this realm on a bad foot because the way that we've been taught was completely imbalanced. So we're not able to navigate properly. Because the things that we use to navigate with, they're not the right tools.
Right. Someone in the chat said, John Lev. I always called him John Levy because he's a damn liar. Anyway, John Levy, he says, is open to meltology. Let me tell you, back in 2019, he had a video about Track of the Gods and this and that and all this nonsense he was telling. I sent him a bunch of information, tried to talk, try to get him to go on live. You'll notice John Levy, he never goes live because he's scripted. He scripts everything. He's real good he's a good orator. He's a magician, man. He can trick people into believing all kinds of stuff. I get all kinds of
his business. His business is production.
I think that's why everyone has to be careful about who they follow and who they watch.
He had a coffee shop. He had a coffee shop that I did the trace route in regard to the coffee shop that's been handed down to the secret societies and the church and so forth. And it's old. It was a Baptist church, and he's there, and he's got a coffee shop. Well, it's melted. There's chunks of it melted, bricks augmented, and so forth. I showed him on his own building. He still didn't want to talk about meltology. So that was 2019. That's when I stopped following Johnny Boy and his dog. So, and some say he's a girl. So I don't know. I didn't even want to get in that rabbit hole.
But dude, I'd argue that meltology is just basically a division of geology. It's not. It's a concept
from it, because geology will teach you nonsense. Geology will teach you.
No, I mean real geology. I mean
plates and.
I just mean geology, Chief. I just mean geology in the sense of it's rocks, basically. We're talking about rocks and stones, and they got melted by an incredible heat, right? Well, that came from the sky. So, rather than focusing on the fact that the rocks were melted,
it shows that it came from the bottom up, Richie, not from the sky. First of all, from the bottom up.
I think it came from both. I think it came from both directions. I think
certainly, just like lightning, exactly. You know, we're on this. We're somewhere. I don't have the answer, but I'll tell you what. They'll tell you that the Milky Way is a galaxy, whereas a meltologist, I'll tell you that's the tear in the veil. This Earth was melted very quickly and put out very quickly, and that blue you see over top of it is what I believe is water. And there's the tear.
and some people think that
veil.
that is a sign. That's a tear in the firmament, and that's when there was the flood.
Right.
The flood. Then there's other people that
Put out
say,
the melt.
well, that flood was actually water that was in the sky anyway. We lived in a vapor canopy. There was a vapor canopy, and all the pressures and the oxygen levels and everything were different on this Earth. And when they were different, we were different. And like this whole idea that you know, I do believe that giants were real, but I do also believe that giants were humans. It was just us in a different state, right? They still.
Yeah, I grew up
they still
around some
had
pretty
souls.
big dudes, man. I was adopted. I carry a Norwegian last name. My prior name was Welsh, Cox. Now, all them boys, man, they were 12 years old and 6'8", 6'9". The girls were 6'1". They were just huge. The one kid's grandpa was 7'2". I'm like, what the hell, man? I'm 5'9".
I mean that makes that sort of height makes me feel short. And I was at 14, I was 6'2".
He was buying beer first when he was 12.
I'm 6'3" and a little bit now, and yeah, 7 foot. I've stood next to people 6'4", 6'5", and it makes me feel
I
short,
carry the name Old Son. Old Son. In my family, they call me the Black Old Son. Black Old Son. Anyway. Black Old Son.
Nath, have you given any... Are you a religious man? Are you
I'm not especially religious.
What?
I mean, I gave my heart to Jesus as a child, but I'm not exactly a biblical scholar.
So where do you stand today with that? You say you accepted Jesus Christ as your Savior. When you're young, do you still hold on to what you believe there?
Yeah, but it's not something I typically discuss. I mean, on a panel like this, what I stick to in terms of discussion points are things that I can absolutely prove beyond all doubt. And that's about it.
I guess, yeah, I don't... Because there's so much that I can't prove, I just don't bother trying. I've got all these all these things over the last... Since 2009, all of this information and data that I've read through, and all the videos of documentaries, white papers I've read, the books I've read. I wasn't methodical while I was doing it, and I wasn't making notes of all of those reference points, so that in the future, once I'd formulated a hypothesis, I could then go back and cite all of those references. Had I had more presence of mind when I began my quest, I would have done that. But the thing is, when I began my quest, I was in bits, emotionally and mentally. And, 2013 was when I really fully embarked on it, and I was spending up to 18 hours a day, sat there, watching documentaries, reading papers and whatever, just researching as much as I could. And it was because, like, I keep coming across stuff and it's like, well, no, whoa, what's that? Right, go and look at that. And then all the things that spin off of that, and then all the things behind them, and then changing tactics and reverse engineering things, or, there's been so much information that I've come across that's helped bring me to where I am now, that where I'm not fairly certain, and this might be, I'm willing to concede that this might be an arrogance that will bite me on the ass somehow. But I feel like one of the things, I've worked something out, and that is that our perceptions are one of the most important things that we can hold. And it's something that was recognized a very long time ago. If they could control our perceptions of what we're experiencing, then they can control our realities. Reality is something that is only, it's only, people will only say, yeah, that's reality if they agree with it. But the things that people agree that are real, they're the only things that are actually real. But people agree on things being real that aren't actually real. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the importance between real and actual, right? And then, so that's objective and subjective. The importance between the reality that each one of us is having a completely subjective experience. No matter how empathic we are, no matter how compassionate we are or considerate,
right.
Trying to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes and imagine what life would be like if we were them, that's all we can do is imagine it. We can't actually experience it, which means that their reality is completely subjective and autonomous to ours, right? And in that sense, it's separate. There's things that we can agree on. And the easiest things for us to agree on are the things that are actually manifest. They're material. They have been made material in this world. And to change somebody's perception of something that is actually made manifest and is material is very difficult. You can't actually, there are limits as to what you can change in their perception of something. So you can make somebody perceive, you can take a hammer and you can perceive it as a tool or you can perceive it as a weapon. And there are some people that will instantly perceive it as a weapon and some that will instantly perceive it as a tool. But that's all dependent on their experience and their experience, basically. What they know about the hammer, what their experience of a hammer has been. But the hammer is still a hammer. Nothing will change that. It's actually a hammer. Doesn't matter if it's a tool or a weapon. It's actually a hammer.
Tommy Rogers says hello, Richie.
Tommy Rogers, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. So, if you've got a group of people that understand that and they know that, and then they can take control of all of the inputs into your perception and control how you're going to perceive what's going on, control how you're going to perceive yourself, how you're going to perceive the people around you, how you're going to perceive the events that happen, how you're going to perceive the events that happen around the world. So to build your world, your mind's eye picture of what the world is like. That if you've got control of those perceptions, you've got control of those realities, of those individual subjective realities. You still have control. And that's one of the things religion did, was it took one of the most important aspects of our life, which is the spiritual aspect, because we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. Actually, the spiritual side is the most important side, because that's the side that's eternal, but the physical is just, it's important because it is so short. Your experience is so short when you're here, and you are so limited as to what you can do. That makes it important, but in the long time, in the scheme of things, in the grand scheme of things, you know, it's if time is only an issue here on this earth, in the physically manifest world, where time is a measurement of change or movement, then I don't know how to end this.
You're onto a bit of a loser because you're describing time, and time is a concept.
Equation derived by man, so therefore there is no time. Party time. 420 time. Do it.
But time, the idea that time is linear is something that actually it applies to. The reason with the time the day's been split up into minutes and hours and seconds is for commerce, not for anything else. It's for international commerce.
Yeah, the other day I
Otherwise-
was timed out for 86,000 seconds.
I don't even know what that is in minutes.
That's 24 hours.
Oh,
They got to tell you how many seconds you're timed out. And then later I go, why did they time me out? It was somebody fumbling, they said. Somebody fumbled and hit something or blah, 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 blah. But I found out the other day I was timed out for 86,000 seconds on YouTube. And it was a freaking ass fishing channel. I didn't say nothing. Huh? I just said, I don't know. I said nice or something like that because he caught a fish, right? I was timed out for 86,000 seconds.
well, maybe there was one of the people on that, one of the mods on that channel knows you from somewhere else, and
Maybe.
you know.
Maybe,
Is there
but
any-
I'm
is there
back
any-
on there. No, I enjoy it because I first was attracted to it. I mean, I've fished before in my life, but I don't go out of my way to go fishing or nothing. But when I was scrolling one day, there was this guy fishing in the area in Arkansas, and it was just multiplication all on the banks and everywhere around him. And so I just investigated there and just kind of watched him fish and stuff, and kind of little bit talked about what I believe in and what I'm looking for. And then the next time I looked at their channel, they're going down the river in waders looking for red bricks, and they found red bricks, and it was pretty fucking wild. Because I don't care where you go, you're going to find red bricks. Because I believe this whole realm was red brick paradise. We'll say that some brown ones over there, or some beige ones. Yeah, because the carbon
the
red
red
was
bricks.
cooked out of them.
One of the things that happens during this event that I've spoken about is that red clay and it seems like blood, clay, and rocks fall from the sky and completely cover everything, right? If that would make, it's like, what are red bricks? Where do red bricks come from? Why have we got all these red bricks? Well, because of the clay. Yeah, but why is the clay red?
Bricks.
Right, where does that come from? So it makes sense. If we had an event that happened where all this red shit fell, all this red dust and
Red brick ash everywhere. Yeah.
and grime and shit all fell out of the sky, as a something flew through the sky and just dropping all this shit, then makes sense that they make red bricks. Like, they utilize what's there and they make red bricks. Red bricks actually provide really good, they hold heat. They're good for
Dielectric energy is what red bricks are capable of doing. Exactly. Each brick was a power bank,
right.
and we can already prove that in meltology.
First time I was homeless, I benefited from that. There was a big building with red bricks, and if it had been sunny during the day, at night, the red bricks were warm. The wall was warm when it had been in the sun during the day. It's like all that heat from the day just gets stored up in those bricks, and then it comes out at night.
Right, and through science, even today's standards of science, showing that the piezoelectric brick compacted with water creates more energy yet. So you see a lot of times, where, the past, and you research it, and the narrative, they give you the narrative of this and that in regard to the realm here. But the more you look at it from a meltologist point of view, you see it was all integrated. This whole realm was integrated, man. We were stepping up, and it was pretty powerful here, and lots have been hidden from us, because they were flying around on dirigibles. They had a pneumatic tube from New York all the way to England. Who the hell built that, man? Who built that?
Did
I
they
got an
though, or
echo
is that
coming somewhere. I hear
did
an
they,
echo.
or
I
is
hear
that
my voice coming back.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to deal with that echo. It's coming from maybe from my earphones, but I have to switch my echo cancellation off because if I don't, it cuts my microphone down to 40%, and it doesn't matter how loud I turn my mic up. Nobody can fucking hear me. So it's just gonna have to be the way it is. But
there's a meltologist who just hit the chat just now. Melt. What's up,
what's
Melt?
up, Doug? I just really, I don't know. I don't like all these silly terms that we give to everything, like saying putting ourselves into groups, right?
Yeah.
Because we're just doing exactly what they want us to do, putting ourselves into groups and labeling those groups. The most glaring, obvious example of that was Tartaria. Right? Everything's fucking Tartarian now. Oh, it's a Antiquitech, Tartarian Antiquitech. It's all, the rocks are all technology. It's all whatever. Well, yeah, I accept that. I accept there was a time when things were different here. I think that we were using electricity in a different form. We were using the more natural electricity of life, right? That here we're all electrical beings. We're the only reason that we're moving and walking, talking, thinking, eating, shitting, and everything is because of tiny little electrical signals going off in our central nervous system. And that's the only fucking reason, because of electricity. Yes, we need water. Yes, we need food. But yes, we need these electrical signals in our brains. Otherwise, we don't function. We're robots. So, I fucking forgotten what I was going to say. I get so...
Hey, that happens, brother. I know you're getting up there in age, my man. Don't feel bad. I hate that when you're in the middle of talking, group of people, you just go froze.
It's the fucking aliens, dude. Listen, it's the it's the Palladians, man. They keep zapping my brain to make me lose my train of thought because I'm...
Hey, 2.4 gigahertz signal, man. It's unlicensed. They go, hey, zap his ass. All right. What was I talking about? Hey, I swear, I'll be sitting out here, and all of a sudden I get an electrical impulse on my leg somewhere, on the bottom part of my leg sometime. I'll be out here on the live stream, a girl will kick on the microwave, I'll feel a little zap in my leg somewhere. What the fuck's that about? Huh? Hey, in my neighborhood, they got these smart meters, right? It throws a signal 40 miles. Okay? Radiation.
Right, I don't...
Here on mine, look, no radios.
It can only throw that signal 40 miles if it's unobstructed by organic.
Well, they got more towers up here, Richie. We got enough towers to fry the whole state of Michigan all around my area.
But they've got all the towers because it's not as... Like, they need the towers to be able to do it because it's not as powerful as they claim
there's
it
more
to be.
up there than you think, Richie. There's more energy going through those that you can do. It's part of the weather augmentation system, too. See? These signals. With the
there's a connection. There is a connection between the patterns created in the clouds when in the seeded clouds, and you get those blanket seeded cloud, and it has all the ripples in it and stuff, or the lines, or it has patterns in it. It correlates to where those towers are.
Right. Well, anyway, my point was they came in here unlawfully. They came unlawfully into my backyard and put a smart meter in there, and I caught them doing it. They had shields on and these big gloves and shit. And I go, hey, you got about an hour to put that back, or that's it. You're in trouble because what you just did is against the law. You can't give me that signal. And they immediately changed it. And I'm the only one around here. No, everyone else has that stupid thing.
Right, I mean, you basically, yeah, you say to him, look, this is your 1 hour notice. If this is still here in 1 hour, I'm taking a sledgehammer to it. And
Well, I
it will
wouldn't
not
have
be
did
here
that,
anymore.
but I would have got paid. You know.
Oh, that's what I would have done.
No, I just wanted not to have that there. And I tried to advocate to my neighbors about that because, you know, I'm with a background in technology and so forth. But nobody, we don't care. Look, here I am on the Wi-Fi signal, you know, and just all these signals. And, you know, you see in the chat, somebody keeps saying, we are dancers in vibration. So true. You know?
Sute. Oh, no, that's his name. Sute, that's Sute's name, yeah.
Right. Shit, last time I got in the stream with you, Rich, I smoked about 4 joints. I got up 4 o'clock in the morning and you was on. Man, by noon I was asleep, brother.
You baked, son.
I was baked. My girl got up, I'm just sitting there ripped. And she's like, what are you doing? I says, I'm hanging out in the Canary Islands.
Rox is just, she was taking Kenny out.
I'm back.
Oh, she's back.
Here. I feel really chuffed to have Nathan here on the panel. This is like such a rarity for me. So like I have like a few kind of group discussion questions that I'd be really kind of interested to get everyone and including Nathan's opinion on, if that's all right with everyone.
All right.
Fine by me.
Okay, so as we all know, people are taught to trust the experts, but obviously one has to push for first-hand observation. So where would be the line between healthy skepticism and rejecting evidence just because it comes from an institution? A lot of people do that, and there's obviously a line between, but where would that be?
Who are you asking?
Everyone. Nathan, you can go first. Rich, you can go first. Whoever goes first. I don't want to direct which way it goes.
I'm going to let Nathan
Hey,
take
teacher, you're going to have to ask the question again then, because I wasn't paying attention very well. I was packing a bowl.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
So, as we all know, people everywhere are taught to trust the experts, but obviously people like ourselves would push for first-hand observations. Where would be the line between healthy skepticism and rejecting evidence just because it comes from an institution?
I have an observation to make before anybody answers it. What defines an expert? So that's what you need to like. So we're told to trust the experts, but we're also told who the experts are, and the experts have proven themselves now to be, you know, what are they experts in exactly, and what makes somebody a fucking expert? So that's with this whole trust the experts thing is like. Yeah, well, so far to date, all the experts the so-called experts have shown me is that they'll do whatever their group will allow them to do. They're not allowed to go against the grain because if they do, their peers completely destroy them. And if the work isn't peer reviewed, then it apparently doesn't mean anything. It's you know, should be discounted and whatever. So this whole idea that we should trust the experts, I just got such a massive issue with it. What are the experts? What experts? Who's a fucking expert? And why are they an expert?
I guess it's realizing that the expert can't inform but define the truth, see? So what do we have to do? We have to listen to evidence, you know, respect knowledge, but stay alert to bias, you know, money and agendas like we were talking about earlier. You know, true skepticism isn't about disbelief, you know, it's about discernment, you know. So that's what I would say.
True skepticism defines true science. You know, true science. That is true science is to be skeptical about everything.
No, it isn't.
To question everything, isn't it?
No, that's not science. Science is an empirical method. So what science does is establish the cause of a naturally occurring phenomena. It's called the scientific method, otherwise known as physics, or the study of the physical and natural world. Now, like with measurements, these things can offer an objective way of looking at the world that is empirical in nature. That is to say, if you measure something, you know what it is based on its measurement. So if an expert offers you a measurement and you can objectively verify it for yourself as a measurement, then that's something that you can stand by because you've verified it, you've checked it yourself. But that doesn't make it science. So there's a hijacking of science that's taken place because of its empirical nature. So when you observe a phenomena, that's to say something occurring in nature, you can formulate what's known as a scientific prediction or hypothesis to presume what has caused that phenomena to occur. So it then becomes an if and then statement. If this, your presumed cause of the effect, then the phenomena will occur. But in the prediction, you also have something called a zero difference result or null hypothesis. It sits alongside the alternative, which is your prediction of what will occur. So you've got two statements that sit alongside one another. One is if A, then B, B being what you've observed in nature, A being what you think will cause it, and if A, not B, i.e. you vary what you think will cause the phenomena and it doesn't cause it. Now, when you do an experiment, you're varying that which you assume or presume by supposition will cause the effect, and only one of the two outcomes can happen. Either it will cause the effect to happen, or it will not cause the effect to happen. If it does not, you validate, let's say you put a tick next to, the null hypothesis. It's a validated prediction. You predicted A would not cause B. You varied A, it didn't cause B. Tick. That's empirically validated. Now, you can't violate the law of non-contradiction.
In short, to make that real short, though, you could just say in short, if it can't be observed,
I haven't quite finished.
Tested,
I haven't quite
or
finished talking.
repeated,
Excuse me. I haven't quite finished talking.
outside the bounds
Why is this
of
guy talking
empirical
straight over the top of me?
science.
What's going on?
Chief,
going on?
Dude, Chief, please don't interrupt, Nathan, mate. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just interjecting. I wasn't trying to.
Do you mind if I finish before you do? Can I finish?
That,
I'm explaining science. I'll try again. So you put a tick next to the null. If you vary A and it doesn't cause B, then that's an empirical outcome because it can't violate the law of non-contradiction. That's to say, A can't both cause B and not cause B at the same time. Only one is possible. So if you vary A and it doesn't cause B, that's an empirical validation. If you vary A and it does cause B, again, it can't both cause and not cause something at the same time. Therefore, you've got an empirical outcome. So at the end of the process, that's upon experimentation, you validate empirically the outcome. Now, there's no trust or experts or peer review or anything. It's just you've got an empirical outcome at the end of that process that you can absolutely without question stand by as being true. Because it can't not be true, you validate it through experimentation. That's very powerful and hijackable. So then you go into, well, science is based on these men agreeing with me after studying my, I don't know, exploration by counting things. And that's been peer-reviewed, therefore science. Well, no. Physics is the study of the physical natural world through systematic experimentation based on hypothesis, otherwise known as the scientific method. That's science. And that's powerful because it's empirical. Likewise, measuring something can offer you empiricism. You know how Earth is measured flat if you measure it. Like with surface level, sea level, those things are measured and you can verify those things. Same with elevation angle measurements, circles of equal altitude, mapping, charting, surveying. When we build things on the surface of Earth, we survey it with horizontal distance measurements, rise over run. These are all practically applied things that are utilising surface level and sea level measurements. So there's no trusting me experts. There's just measurements that you can do if you want to build something, or travel, navigate, map, chart, fly, sail. All of these things require you understand implicitly how Earth gets measured, or you die if you don't. So I'll stand by those things because they're empirically validatable and provable beyond all doubt based on either scientific empiricism, that's experiment, or measurement. Now I'm done.
Thank you for that. I found myself taking notes while you were talking. Thank you. Next, Rich.
I came across
And the
that.
chat room as well. Go on.
I can't
And the
remember
chat
what her
room as
name
well.
is. Hang on, am I answering a question? What
Yeah, the same question.
was the question again?
So what's the line between healthy skepticism and rejecting evidence just because it comes from an institution?
Right. The last
right.
gentleman just tied off on empirical evidence a little bit more. That's what happened in that question. And that's why Richie had to ask what was the question again, because we were just talking about empirical science. And forgive me for interrupting when I did, but I was only trying to expound, about empirical evidence, because that's what we use in meltology is empirical evidence. And we call it empirical science. And it's a branch of science. And it's based on observation, experiment, and experimentation rather than theory or belief. See? So to make everything that guy said real short, it means knowledge is built from what can be seen, see, with your eyes, measured and tested, using real world evidence. In short, it can be observed, see? Everything what that guy just said, I said in that little short sentence. See, I didn't have to use all those words that, words are spells. Like I'm pretty schooled, I think. I got a bachelor's degree. But you know what? Listen to that guy. It was like mumbo jumbo. You put so many words together. I didn't even really understand what you're talking about. I know you're trying to talk about empirical science. And it kind of,
I understood.
I know it wasn't what the question was, though, but
Well, if I wanted, so I'll say I think what Nath was saying was basically if it can be empirically tested, then that's the only thing that you can prove to be correct, right?
Precisely.
Everything else is a theory.
Well, no, not a theory. So theory comes after scientific empiricism has been offered. So you have something occurring in nature. To break this down, you see something happening. Yeah? So something occurs and you go, I wonder why that happened. And then you go, well, I think this caused that thing in nature to happen. So then to check if that is the reason the thing you observed in nature happened or not, you vary your suppositional causal influencer. That's the thing you think will cause the phenomena to happen by varying it. That's it. So you just vary what you think will cause the effect. So, for example, you come across a boiling hot spring and go, I wonder what caused that. And then you go, maybe it's the level of acid in the water. So you take some water, add acid to it and see if it boils. And when it doesn't, you empirically validate the null. If A, acid content, then B, your water will boil. But it didn't. So you've got an empirical outcome. The null gets verified. Whereas if you say, I think heat will cause the water to boil, and then you vary the amount of heat applied to the water, and it boils, then you've varied a presumed cause, and it has caused the effect. You varied heat, the water boiled, tick, alternative hypothesis confirmed. Then you form theory. Theory comes after experiment. But again, it's another word that gets hijacked so that people think that if you say, well, I've got a theory, your automatic assumption is that they've put that through the scientific method, when it might just be a guess or a just so story. But a scientific theory is that which has been validated through scientific experimentation after formulating a hypothesis. That's your prediction. If heat, then water boiling. And you just vary heat. That's an experiment. When you vary the heat of the water, that's you experimenting. Once you've done that, you form a theory.
So,
do you want to hear a crazy coinkydink, or maybe it's a synchronicity, or maybe I truly am psychic, but the thing that was in my mind when before you started speaking, and the example I was going to use was water, boiling water, like a hot spring that was boiling. And I was thinking about, I was actually thinking about, it wasn't boiling, it was gas that was rising up from underneath and causing it to look like it was boiling. But yeah, it's still the same example, water.
I love that. So What tools or simple experiments would you recommend ordinary people use to verify claims for themselves? Can I start with Nathan first? So, what tools or simple experiments would you recommend ordinary people to use to verify claims for themselves?
It's not necessarily the tools that you use, it's more understanding the methodology. So step one is to observe something occurring in nature. So physics is the study of the physical and natural world, and natural science and its method, the scientific method, governs this. Step one is to observe something occurring in nature. So anything happening is a naturally occurring phenomenon that you can put into this method. That phenomenon is called a dependent variable in your hypothesis. So as soon as you observe something occurring in nature, you've got half of your hypothesis already. You've got the dependent variable. The other half of the hypothesis is what you think will cause it, otherwise known as an independent variable, that which you will vary and manipulate to see if it causes the effect you observed at step one. So then you've got a full hypothesis in the alternative. If A, that's what you think will cause, B, your natural phenomena. So once you know the method and how it functions, you can see something occurring, leaf falls from tree, that's your naturally occurring phenomenon, and you can say, I wonder what caused that. I know, I'll assume this X, whatever it may be, will cause that to happen. Then you simply vary X to see if it causes the leaf to fall from the tree, your naturally occurring phenomena. It's just a simple if and then statement that's validated by you varying that which you think will cause an effect that you observed in nature. If it does, that's the experiment, then you validated it. Anything can be put through the scientific method if it's a naturally occurring phenomena, from the most basic things like water boiling all the way through to the establishment of quantum mechanical theories, which are based on the diffraction of light and establishing that the cause in terms of what causes light diffraction to give us things like quantum mechanics and therefore computing. Well, these things, again, aren't something that you could contest in terms of how they've come to fruition. They've come via the scientific method. That's to say they're empirically validated through experimentation. And in terms of quantum mechanics, you've got knowledge of which path information being varied as the presumed causal influencer. Once you understand those principles, you've got from the most basic water boiling to the most complex diffraction of light, and quantum mechanics being the outcome, and computing being the outcome of those scientific validity. So those are things that you can not believe in, but understand have been verified empirically through this method, as opposed to measuring Earth with an angle to Polaris and then suggesting that the outside edge of a flat circle you derive mathematically is actually the outside edge of a ball put into motion by Copernicus and Kepler, heliocentrism, the church's version of a bastardization of flat Earth measurements. But they'll call that science. But there's no experiment, it doesn't adhere to the method, it's not empirical, it's a just-so story based on measurements of a flat Earth. That's not science. But they've called it science so that people who hear it think it's been proved empirically. It hasn't.
Thank you. Next, Rich.
I'd say that there's the collective who buy into the narrative given to us about space and rockets and Tesla and fucking Space Force and NASA and all that. They'll all say, well, of course it's been empirically tested. We sent a man to the moon. We've got satellites in space. We've got this. We've got that. Right? Because they're all perceiving the information that they've been given to be true and factual. And it's data. It's just data. It's not... We have no way of proving any of it empirically. We can't. There's no experiments that we can do down here to prove or disprove what they're telling us. So, for me,
You got a song there, Richie.
for me, this is why I'm a philosopher and not a scientist, because I think, as I've said before, there are things like that. This Earth it's impossible for us to accurately measure this Earth because it's so big, it's so vast in comparison to us as individuals, how we navigate this Earth and everything. There's so many variables, there's so many things that we have to contest with and contend with in order to be able to take accurate measurements of distances and sizes, and it's impossible. We're not ever going to be able to do that.
We have done that.
So then, so we say, but most of it's based on guesstimations.
Well, no, it's based on
because
measurements.
of this, then we assume that.
Not really. You just measure it, like with surveying.
Well, in that case, then why do we not have an accurate model of this Earth?
Having an accurate model isn't measuring Earth, is it? Models, in a scientific term, would be, again, something that you form after scientific empiricism. You can form scientific models. What you're talking about is maps, and we've got loads of them, but they're distorted.
Yeah, but they're all distorted, right?
Yeah, but that's
Why
distorting.
are they distorted?
Yeah, but you distort it after you measure it. So in terms of how we measure Earth, we measure with horizontal distance measurements, rise over run, surveying, and trig, all of which require a planar surface to reference, sea level, which has also been measured. All of these things get measured and then converted. So you can take all of these measured distances. For instance, the Polaris system that's used as a base for most of these maps is based on measuring elevation angles to a star called Polaris. So you start with Polaris at the centre, with U below it. That's the zenith position of Polaris. As you back away from Polaris, Polaris will drop towards the horizon 1 degree for every 60 nautical miles that you back away from it. All that means is that there's a circle around Polaris that's 60 miles from its centre, that's the radius value of the circle, that at all points on that circle, Polaris is 1 degree lower than zenith. Well, that's just a measurement that you can easily verify of Polaris. You back away another degree, and it's 2 degrees towards the horizon as you back away from it. This is latitude. That gets put onto a map, but then you can take those points and project them onto circles and call them areas of equal elevation. Then you're into calculations after the flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurement. Same with horizontal distance. All of these things have been measured, but then converted to systems of areas of equal altitude or projected onto globes and then projected back out onto flat maps. In the case of the projection called the Mercator, where you turn circles, that's what I've just described with Polaris, areas of equal elevation. That's flat circles based on an angle measured off a flat ground to Polaris, 2 straight lines. That can get converted onto a ball and then projected back out onto a square map by projecting the points from the ball onto a cylinder wrapped around it, cutting it down the middle and then rolling it out so you end up with a square grid instead of circles of equal elevation. But the starting point for those converted maps that you called models are measurements of the surface. That's how we get to those maps. Now, the reason they're converting them is so that you can say, well, it's come from a globe. But the end result must function in a way that can be useful for navigating the surface of Earth with horizontal distance measurements, surface level measurements, sea level measurements, and angles to stars that are used and have been used successfully to navigate the surface, all of which are based on measurements, angle measurements of the stars. So Earth has been measured, but the conversion to the thousands of maps that distort those measurements are what we end up with for globe maps, like the Mercator, like the Gulpeters. But the systems, the square grid called latitude and longitude, 2D, still comes from measuring luminaries with angles off the flat surface. So we have measured Earth, but then the powers that should not be, if you want to call them that, distort those measurements into thousands of different maps that are claimed to be originally from globe projections. That's the claim. But they're not. The globe itself is derived also from these flat Earth measurements to Polaris. So I mentioned earlier that the minimum, that is to say when Polaris, as I described it a moment ago, reaches the horizon, that's your minimum elevation angle measurement of Polaris, otherwise known as the equator. Well, the equator's based on measuring Earth flat with Polaris. That's a measurement.
Well,
So we have measured Earth, but we convert it to balls and then convert it back to flat maps so it can actually be used with horizontal linear distance measurements when we...
but as you're saying,
and
flat in the first
and
place.
there's a lot of political influence into the actual construction of those maps, and depending on what we know when they were done, when they were made.
Yeah.
And all maps are based on other maps, and like Mercator, his map was based on older maps as well, didn't he?
Well, he's using a flat square grid that's based on the latitude and longitude system, and that's derived in its ball sense from areas of equal elevation made possible only by Polaris and the celestial sphere system. So the celestial sphere, again, is based on elevation angles to all the luminaries, alleged to have a two flat system based mathematics. So you've got a south and north, both are prerequisite flat directions, might add that in, but you can sandwich one on top of the other, antipodal from one another, north and south, which they're not. But you can, in terms of the celestial sphere, project a ball based on a flat ground and flat sky measurement. So back to your Polaris being at your zenith, it's above your head. As you move away from it, in order to describe it dropping towards the horizon by 1 degree, you must be measuring a flat sky above your head on a flat ground, but with a curved protractor. Well, if you plot the points on that curved protractor, you end up with a dome of vision based on the angle measurements from the flat sky and flat ground that you can then call the celestial sphere, both north and south. You can then sandwich that antipodal, and then you've got something called the celestial sphere view. But you don't have a dome of vision wrapped around you. It's just based on the angles you've measured to these points in the flat sky from the flat ground with a protractor. So it's essentially a giant protractor view, north and south, which creates a sphere. Well, then you can put a globe inside that protractor view, north and south. But essentially, for that to function, you must be standing from within the globe Earth that's been created with this protractor angle measurement of the flat surface and the flat sky. That's how it's measured. Earth's just a giant protractor. Globe Earth, that's all it is. Giant protractor.
Perfectly put. Thank you. Thank you very much. I've also got another question for everyone. I've put it up on the screen. So once someone accepts that much of what they were taught is wrong, where should their curiosity go next? Physics, history, or consciousness? What would everyone's opinion be on that?
I would say this is so... I went where my heart took me. That's all I like. Once I realised that what I was thinking was wrong, because because I'd been lied to. There were these lies. So obviously, I had to take all of this information that I thought, all these things that I thought I knew, take them out of my little toy box, right, and work out which of my toys were broken and which ones were still useful, and yeah, I mean, so then I just went where it felt right to go, and I can't explain that. I can't explain that to, like, it just, I felt, I had a feeling, I had an inner guide that just, yeah, it was I don't know if it was a pull or a push, but I was drawn to certain information because I could see how that information was fundamentally important in the construction of my perception of what is real. All right, where we are and what's going on and why. As Alan Watts puts it, I am a seeker. I'm not a phony seeker, but a real seeker. So I think everything has to be looked at, right? But there were certain things that were just kind of fundamental. So, right, the shape of the Earth, the story of if we did we evolve? Did we evolve from? Did we crawl out of the fucking gloop and turn into humans eventually? Was there some sort of retarded monkey fish? Like was it Garrison says in South Park? But that was important to me because I'd always been talking to what I perceived to be God, regardless of what anybody said. I've always had a personal relationship with something that I speak to, and I thought it was God, or I don't know if it's the creator or if it's a higher version of myself. I'm not sure what it is, but I know that it's actually it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, right? I don't think Christians will say that I'm listening to the devil and it's Lucifer because it's steered me away from religion and Christianity, and it's given me a very firm perception of what religion is. But to a Christian, I've been tempted by the devil. I've been misguided, misled by Lucifer himself.
Is it your question?
The greatest trick the devil ever played on the world was to convince them that he was real.
You've got a few components in your question. It is your question, right? 007. That's you.
No, it's Rox's question.
Oh, Rock's question, man.
Okay. I mean, in part of the question, you've got part of the answer, which is to first assess what it is you're assessing. So in this case, you've got history, physics, and consciousness. And when you ask the question, what have you been taught and is it right or wrong, in the way the question's phrased, the first thing I would assess is primary source research in terms of what you're assessing. So go back through a historical standard and see what is or isn't correct based on a historical standard. That's primary source research.
Drop that for me.
Go on, Nate. Sorry, mate.
Hey, I had to
dropped
interrupt.
that.
He's talking. I'm sitting here. This thing came whizzing by, almost hit me. Right?
A bird dropped
Black
it on you.
walnut. Yeah, the damn bird telling me to open the damn thing because I'm always feeding them out here. A little while ago, you heard them bitching, right? They were all, wah, wah, hey, get some food out here, jackass. And they dropped this, I swear, man. They're so fucking cool. Anyway, sorry for interrupting.
No worries. I mean, if it comes to stuff that you've been taught, I was lucky enough to be educated privately, and I later found out, taught very differently in normal Church of England schools here in the UK.
I was taught privately as well, so I can vouch for that.
We got taught how to do primary source research. So don't just accept what you're told. Who told them that? Where did they get the information from? When you find that particular source, where did they get it from? And so on and so forth. Till you find the origin of it all, the primary source of the information. So it's not necessarily the case that everything you get taught is wrong. Some of it might be right. You just need a method to know how to verify with a historic standard, and that's primary source research. If it's a physics standard, that's the scientific method. If it's alleged to be the study of the physical and natural world, that's based on naturally occurring phenomena, which automatically excludes all things synthetic. That's man-made, because you know what caused it, and man made it. But if it's a naturally occurring phenomena, it falls under physics. Physical and natural world, natural science, the scientific method. So you can just ask, has it been through the scientific method? If it has, the scientific method has a requirement for systematic experimentation. So it's an ongoing process. Even if you verify something empirically, the method itself has incorporated into it the necessity to continually validate through experimentation. So if someone's like, well, it's done, we've figured that out now. It's like, well, no, you would continue to do that experiment and verify it. That is to say, you verify it for yourself. You don't just accept whoever tells you that this has been verified, I've done the experiment, just take my word for it. Well, no, you should be able to very easily do it yourself, vary and manipulate that which is alleged to cause the effect and is suggested to have been validated through experiment. You should be able to do that yourself. So with physics, you just verify it for yourself. If there's plenty of examples of people putting it through the scientific method, it will be theory, but that will be obvious, like with quantum mechanics, because you end up with technology off the back of science. Now, technology isn't science, but more often than not, it's come through scientific empiricism. So you don't need to trust it. You've normally got a piece of technology as a result of the scientific empiricism that was offered through the systematic experimentation. So that's a different standard. So physics, you'd look at it through the lens of, does it go through the scientific method or not? History, you'd look at it in terms of, can you establish it through primary source research as being the case, through documented evidentiary standards that history would force you to apply if you want to trust what you're being told. You just have to verify it for yourself. So not everything that you get taught is necessarily right or wrong automatically once you know you're being lied to. You just need tools to be able to say, how can I verify whether or not this claim to be experiment is legitimate or not? Well, if you know what the scientific method is, you can ask yourself, has it been through this method? Have they established the cause of a natural phenomena? Have they varied and manipulate their presumed cause? If it's a historic standard, can you go through their primary sources and see who told them and see who told that person and so on and so forth till you get to the beginning? And if you can't, then you can't trust it. So when I talk of people like Copernicus and let's go back a bit further, people like Al-Biruni, can I verify that Al-Biruni measured Earth flat to get the mountain height to go up it and derive a dip angle to derive radius? No, I can't. I can't go back far enough to validate that with primary source research. So I do not accept Al-Biruni as even existing because I can't prove it. But do I accept their narrative in their story of measuring the height of the mountain with trig and horizontal distance measurement? Well, that's their story. Fine by me. Your story involves measuring the height of the mountain with a linear, flat distance and trig. Therefore, Al-Biruni in their story measures Earth flat. Well, I can stand by that because it's their story. As a hostile witness, very useful, because he, like everybody, is requiring a flat surface level to derive the height of the mountain to go up it to derive a radial value. I don't need to accept that Al-Biruni exists in a historic standard in order to do that, though.
Al-Biruni is not a goonie, man.
Might not be real. I don't know. I can't validate that, so I don't accept that. If you prove it to me that he was real through a different historical standard, I'd look at it after you told it me and check for myself. But as it stands, might be real. I doubt it. He might not have ever even existed. The man might be completely made up for all I know. The primary source research comes to an end after 500 or 600 years. So 2,000-year-old character existing? Maybe. I doubt it.
I like that. Thank you. Everyone else? Rich, what do you think?
I've already said, haven't I? Because the question is where should your curiosity take you? And really, I think that is that if you have a curiosity, just having a curiosity, right, is the thing. Follow your curiosity. Oh, but curiosity killed the cat. Well, yeah. Not in this instance. You're not going to die by looking at data and information and considering ideas and considering thought games, man. Playing thought games, play thought games with yourself, play thought games with other people, where you imagine, I'm just more of a philosopher than a scientist. So my requirements aren't the same. I don't feel that I need to go out and empirically test anything. I've made my observations of La Palma and El Hierro, 125 kilometers away. I applied the mathematics. I made the calculations given to us, based on NASA's formula. And that all says that it should be hidden. I shouldn't be able to see those islands. They're 2,600 meters high and the curvature is 2,600 meters. So at that distance, so they should be hidden. So that says to me that they're lying. What we've been given, the information we've been given, is inaccurate. How much that matters, like that, I've applied. That's a spiritual thing for me. It's not. Like I said, I'm not. I don't care so much about science. I'm a more philosophical.
Okay, let me just break down what you've said. So you've given me a couple of measurements. One was the height of the thing in the distance. The height is measured off surface level, though, isn't it? Off sea level. So you've measured Earth flat to get the height.
I mean, I just used the
you're right,
data
it's
given.
You got to measure it flat. You can't not.
Yeah, what I'm saying is,
I just used.
this is the trick. I'm trying to break down the trick so you don't fall victim to it again.
Well, I thought Richie was answering Roxanne's question.
Yeah, but he's using prerequisite flat Earth heights off sea level and linear distance in kilometres, both of which require you measure Earth flat before you do anything in the calculation to say that you see too far. You don't see too far, you've got eyeballs and you just see what you see. Saying you see too far is an inference that there should be a blockage based on measuring the height of something off surface level and then measuring the distance in linear flat kilometres. So you're measuring Earth flat twice to ask if you should or shouldn't see something. You've got eyeballs. That dictates what you see.
This is why there's no debate, right?
There's no debate. Exactly. Before you've got to assert that...
Brilliant.
Sorry.
Before you've got to assert that you see too far, no. Your eyeballs dictate what the distance you can see is, not mathematics that require surface level heights, that's elevations, and distances in linear kilometres. Horizontal distance measurement must be measured, and height off sea level must be measured. So you measure Earth flat twice to then say, oh, the ball says I should have a limitation blocking my view at a certain distance, and when it's not blocking my view, I see too far. That leans into their argument where you whistle past two flat Earth measurements to suggest that there's a blockage that's being overcome. No, you just measured Earth flat twice. You don't need to do anything after you've got the horizontal distance in kilometres and height off sea level. You've measured Earth flat twice. You don't need to appeal to any formula. But earlier I was like, well, every measurement, including their globe measurements, requires Earth be measured flat to infer that there's a distance to a geometric horizon that you say we see beyond. Well, no, we measure Earth flat in linear kilometres and miles, and we measure the height off surface level. Those are two flat Earth measurements. Once you've done that, there's no question about whether or not a globe edge is going to get in your way. You've measured your height off surface level and the distance in linear flat kilometres. So Earth's just being measured flat. But that was the trick. The trick was getting you a flatty to say we see too far and ignore that you're measuring Earth flat twice.
I'm not a flatty. I'm a realmy.
We're all flatties. That's how Earth's measured.
We live in an observably, measurably flat plane. With its own topography, with valleys and peaks, but I'm of the personal opinion that the realm is not something that's ever been measured accurately entirely, right? And it's a fluid realm that is.
No, it has. It's all been measured.
It responds to.
Are you just wrong? Can I correct you? You're just wrong.
Collective perception of it.
Are you just wrong? It has been measured. When you say we've got hills and valleys, how do you think the heights and depths of those are measured? They're measured with respect to sea level. When you give your altitude, and it's on a graph, a map, those altitudes have been surveyed with respect to sea level. So we've measured every inch of the known territory of Earth. Every inch of it's been surveyed and measured. It's all on maps with heights above sea level.
You've been told.
Yeah, that's what we've
you've
been
told. You can't go nowhere.
I've not done it myself. I'm relying on the words of men.
If Richie went east and I went west, me and Richie would never meet. That's what I believe.
Okay, but east and west are flat, aren't they?
Well, whatever you want to call it. I don't know.
It's not what I want to call it.
I know that we're trapped. We're trapped in this little finite mind of ours, No,
and a compass is just 2D.
It seems like we've diverted from Roxanne's question that Richie was trying to answer. I don't know. I'm kind of lost, man.
Okay, well, if you use a compass It's flat. Directions north, south, east and west are all flat. Again, to whistle past this and say, well, I've never measured it. Well, you're describing using a compass though, aren't you? That's flat.
I mean, I guess the point is, like I said, because I'm more philosophical than scientific, so I don't need. There's only so much that I need to be able to show me that what I previously perceived was incorrect, and then my own common sense says, well, I've been perceiving the world incorrectly for this long. What does it actually matter how I perceive the world? And then I come to the conclusion that it only matters because it matters how I perceive myself and other people. So this whole science thing, I think science ended up being, science is something that comes from the ego, because it's only the ego that needs to know. The ego needs to know how far away the sun is and what the earth is, whether the earth is flat or round or whatever. That all comes purely from the ego. And it's because the soul, it doesn't matter to the spirit or the soul. That doesn't matter. They're not, because they're not of the physical realm. They're experiencing the physical realm, but they're not of it. They're just in it. So this idea of science, it's a wonderful idea, but it's, at the end of the day, it comes from the ego, and I'm trying to be more, I'm trying to be balanced. It's like I say, I'm not good and I'm not bad, I'm balanced. I'm not gonna, because, I'm capable of really terrible things, but I'm capable of really good things as well. And it's up to my discernment and my own self-control and self-belief and whatever, how I respond in each moment, So when I saw El Hierro and La Palma, I was excited because I saw that as an opportunity to prove once again that what they've told us isn't true. Because I'd already come to the conclusion at that point that it was a lie. We were being lied to from 2013 when I arrived here on the island in 2015. I was only going by what I was seeing from other people. I didn't have any personal experience. I hadn't made any personal observations. And then one day, suddenly I noticed these islands, and then I asked some questions, and then I made some measurements based on what they tell us in fucking Google Maps, drawing a line from the highest point of one of the islands to roughly where I was on the map. And it said 125 kilometers, and then I drew it to the other peak, and that's 125 kilometers. And so I just put that into the calculator, the curvature calculator that they provide online. And that was enough for me to say, to actually say publicly, and for a short while, say I was a flat earther before realizing that that's just another claim. Because then, as soon as you say that, people want a model. They want to see it. They want to see how this model works. Because they've got a model of the globe, so they want a model of this other paradigm. And that's all I see is paradigms that restrict our own perceptions. But I saw enough for me to say publicly, they're lying to us about the globe. It's not a globe of 25,000 miles circumference. We're not spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. We're not. The moon is not 250,000 miles away or whatever it is. The sun and the moon, they're within our atmosphere. They're much closer. All of those things, I was able to come to that conclusion based on the fact that they're fucking lying to us about everything, about the shape of the earth, about history, about everything. They're lying. And that's why I'm philosophical about it and say, why are they lying? Well, they're lying to shape our perceptions. Because then they can control reality. They can control what everybody is.
Sure, but they've controlled it based on measuring it.
this is what I'm not realizing. So even when you're looking at using the Earth curvature calculator, whatever it's called, all these measurements, everything, if like you said, you're gonna have to measure Earth flat twice before you take any measurements for anything.
Correct.
Because everything's based off of that. So if that's how they've had us from the get-go.
Yeah, so the trick was to get us to ignore how flat it must be for horizontal distance measurements and surface level measurements.
I feel like I'm red-pilled all over again, Nathan. Sorry to interrupt you. Carry away. I literally have to like take a deep breath because that's what the pennies literally dropped within the last 45 minutes of exactly what it is you've been conveying. So they don't call me bullet for nothing. Apologies, but yeah, I'm taking a deep breath because they've managed to get us to ignore that and push an argument that they can use. I digress. Carry on. Sorry.
Well, yeah. Well, it's perfect. You're picking up on the fact that in order for us to be useful as quote unquote flat earthers, which I appreciate you want to step away from, because the typical flat earther is whistling past the measurements of Earth and asking if we can see too far. When to suggest that we've got a sphericity, we first must measure Earth so we can cleverly convert it into these models that our opponents suggest we should have. But their model also requires we measure Earth first, flat, to create their ball model. So their ball model, the outside edge of it, the radial value, comes from measuring Earth flat. There's two different methods to do that. One is measuring Earth flat with an elevation angle minimum to Polaris. The other is Al-Biruni, who I mentioned earlier. First, he measures the height of the mountain. How does he do that? With a horizontal distance measurement along a flat surface, so that he can get his height above surface level to then calculate a dip angle to the surface level. So he's got 3 flat Earth measurements. He's got parallel eye level, horizontal distance, and vertical from surface level. All 3 require we measure Earth flat to derive a radial value, so that you can convert it into sphericity, put it into an Earth curve maths that also requires you measure your height off surface level and a horizontal distance measurement that's linear and flat, to then say we see too far based on a calculation of where a geographical point in the distance we call the horizon is represented by their maths as being an obstruction called Earth curve. But their obstruction called Earth curve is a derivation of perspective based on flat Earth measurements. That's how they've measured Earth to create the ball, to then get you to ignore the flat measurement and say we see too far.
Can I just point something out? I never once said anything about seeing too far. What I said was I could see things that, according to their model, should have been hidden by curvature. I didn't say anything about seeing too far, because I don't think of it in those terms. I think of it as, well, we shouldn't. It's what should be hidden. Like, I shouldn't be able to see those buildings because those islands, because they should be hidden behind the curvature that they say should be there, because they say that we're on a globe that's 25,000 miles in circumference approximately. So according to the law of, spherical law of what a ball, and the law of curvature, then it should be hidden behind the curve. But I don't think of it as seeing too far. Because I think that we can see as far as the atmosphere will allow us to see. If the atmosphere was completely clear, we lived in a vacuum. We didn't need air to breathe, and we lived in a vacuum where there were no particles in the air other than the oxygen and the. But even that, even those oxygen, the things that make up the air, right, are all particles that, over distance, compress because of perspective. Right, so then that will create a natural distortion or barrier. So, thinking about clouds, when David Weiss's example about the clouds and the atmosphere, when you look at the distance, the clouds look like they've come down and they've compressed down and they're, closer to the surface of the Earth. But they haven't. That's just a perspective that's creating that illusion that there are these, that with this being our vision of it is being obstructed by something. In reality, there's nothing actually obstructing it. It's just it's the distance and the perspective that creates the law of observation. Basically, the way our eyes work, we can only perceive so much with our five senses, right? This is what I was saying earlier about if we had an accurate perception of what was going on, an accurate perception of each other, then in everybody's mind's eye, there would be an accurate perception of everything, and there would be fewer disagreements because everybody would know. And anybody that came out saying something ridiculous, everybody else would know because everybody's got an accurate perception of what's going on. They'd be able to say, "You're daft. What are you going on about?" Like we all know that the Earth is actually, it's a flat plane. We're not on a spinning ball. The idea that we could be on a spinning ball where gravity is really strong and yet it's really weak. It's strong enough to hold planets together and pull comets into our orbit and hold moons in great big bodies of rock or whatever it is and hold that in orbit. It's strong enough to do that, but it's not strong enough to stop a butterfly from flying up off the ground. Or we're able to overcome gravity for a temporary brief time if gravity were a real thing, right? And not actually density and oh fucking hell, brain fart. You know what I'm talking about.
Sure, but the same thing applies.
Relative density and electromagnetic attraction.
Well, no, but the gravity you're describing, the 110-year out-of-date Newtonian force of down, is also in requirement of a flat plane to describe it. So you're describing downward vectors. Downward vectors are perpendicular to a plane of reference. That's a flat Earth measurement in Newtonian terms for weight. It's just weight.
But that's where we've been completely fucking hoodwinked, because people's perception is that these things are they're real. This is a real thing. Gravity, the way it was described by Newton, was a real thing at the time. Everybody agreed on it, and then Einstein comes along and says, "Hang on a sec, that doesn't make sense because of this." And we've got two different versions of gravity. How many people know that we've got two different versions of gravity? Not many. I know that's one of your. It's brilliant when people say, right, when people say, "Oh, gravity," and you say, which Newtonian or Einstein? Einstein's gravity or Newton's gravity?
I had a pound for every time I did activism with Riley, and someone did not know what gravity it was. They were arguing the toss for. It was quite comical to watch people go hell for leather arguing the toss, and then when he used to ask them what gravity is it you're even talking about, they'd be like, "What do you mean?" And at that point you just be like, "Oh wow, you really are just hell-bent on arguing for something that you don't understand what it is you're arguing for."
It's far easier to accept it. I mean, if they describe the force of down as being gravity and you accept and understand that it's just weight, it's weighing stuff in air, right? You say it's relative density. Well, generally we don't weigh things in water, but we just weigh them in air. But that's still down, perpendicular to a plane of reference. You need a flat Earth to weigh things.
I would argue that the air that we're breathing is water in a different state. You know, I think that once you go up, the higher you go up, the dense. They say that air becomes lighter, but it's only because of the oxygen levels. I think the air actually becomes denser the higher you go.
You can't weigh air.
I don't know. It's just that's just an idea.
A couple of things. So air is an atmosphere. Atmosphere is sphere-shaped air. Atmo means air. Sphere is a shape. Air doesn't take shapes arbitrarily. It takes the shape of its containment. So there is no atmosphere. It's an oxymoron. But back to
Right,
gravity.
but I'm using it in the sense that everybody understands it, and generally, right, because most people haven't gone into this sort of detail about things, so we use words as they're like a reflex. It's like the atmosphere. I know atmosphere. Oh fucking hell! I know it's an oxymoron. It's a nothing, right? But it's this term that we use, and everybody, on the whole, generally,
Sure.
people accept it as a description of the air up there.
Sure, but when we weigh things in air, to weigh something, you are weighing it in a downward orientation, perpendicular to a plane. In other words, to have this axiomatic principle employed at all, you require Earth be flat. There are no flat surfaces on a ball, and there is no perpendicular to a plane on a ball. You can only describe this downward vector perpendicular to a plane. That's what weight is. Now, weight's been hijacked, so we can argue all day about gravity and whether or not it's real or Newtonian or Einsteinian. Meanwhile, to weigh things, Earth must be flat. It's an actual measurement that requires an axiom, perpendicular being the axiom. So if we can, again, it's part of the magic trick where we argue about what gravity is, when I can just say, well, no, we're making a measurement, something that we can look at empirically, and it is ipso facto perpendicular to a plane of reference. It's a downward vector. Down only exists on a flat Earth. On a ball, it's in and out, not down.
Yep.
So if we can whistle past the flat Earth requirement and measurement that we're making, we can argue about gravity in sphere-shaped air. That's a trick. We're being utilised as flat earthers to prop up the opponent's position so they can argue about something that ignores how flat Earth is being measured, in this case with a downward orientation perpendicular to a plane. All measurements require Earth be flat, axiomatically. Doesn't matter if it's height, that's elevation, the height of the thing you looked at in the distance, or horizontally, linear, with measurements of distance, flat, or perpendicular to a plane in terms of weight. Doesn't matter what you describe. If it's reference to Earth and it's a measurement, it will require Earth be measured flat. There are no exceptions to that fact. When you know that, you stop concerning yourself with how Earth gets claimed to be a ball, and suddenly you start looking at how their claim of Earth being a ball will require Earth to be measured flat by them. And it is always measured flat by them in all of their claims of sphericity. They all originate at flat Earth measurements. The actual practical measurements of Earth to create a ball are flat. There's no exceptions.
So one of the things that is kind of all I'm thinking now is really what's required is critical thinking, right? In order to be able to wrap your head around what's being said, people need to be able to think critically. And the trouble is, there's not a huge percentage of people that are even capable of doing that. So we're going to have to get used to the fact that these people are always going to exist, and they're just going to go along with the people that they think are the authority on it. They're going to go along with that. We're never going to be able to convince them of anything otherwise, because they're incapable of thinking critically to be able to challenge these things in their own mind and play these thought games where we explore possibilities, we explore concepts, we explore ideas in our mind's eye. I think the only true minority on this earth is people that are able to think critically.
Maybe, but if I was to give you a shortcut, because I've got to disappear shortly. But
that's what's needed is short, because the attention span of the world doesn't have. See, everything you said, nobody would. It's like, there it is, attention span. The world won't have time to listen to that. You know what I mean? It's like, If you can't say it quick and short with a picture, I don't know. It's just like
Then
real.
I
Well,
would
I'll summarise it
I would
quickly.
say that-
Everywhere.
If you'll allow me, I'll
Attention
give you a quick summary. Earth is measured
Yes,
flat
please.
in all instances and without exception. There you go. Nice and easy.
Beautiful, beautifully put.
See? There, that's what the world needs to hear. You know, stuff like that.
But
you know,
but
in regard to-
that's my point,
so
though.
in
Dude,
regard
listen,
to,
Chief, that's my
Roxanne-
point.
Right.
That's my point, mate. The TikTok generation
Yeah.
that need this constant bish, 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 bish of data
No, I'm
and
getting
information.
it. I'm getting it.
We're
Yeah,
never
brother. I
going.
hear you.
We're not going to be able to speak to them. You cannot. You can't impart wisdom to people that can only focus their attention if there's lots of bright lights and things happening, making it really interesting to keep their attention for longer than 20 seconds. And before they move on to the next thing that fills their brain, and then the next thing that fills their brain. So whatever it was that you might have, whatever knowledge or wisdom that you might have imparted in that 20 seconds is going to have been buried under all the other shit that they've watched before and after that. They can't hold these things in their mind and think critically about them. So what's the point?
Well, I agree. If you're saying people can't absorb very basic information, I can't do anything about that. But what I'm trying to get across is that regardless of how much people can absorb or how limited their attention span is, all origins of all Earth measurements are flat for everyone. Doesn't matter if you're a ball believer or a flatty or a Tartarian or a Meltist, all of the measurements are flat. There's no exception to that. Once you wrap your head around that, if somebody starts to tell you that they're on a ball, you can take them back in time through their rhetoric, and their rhetoric will require they measure Earth flat too, because that's how it's measured. To create the ball, this is it. This is all I want your audience to know. All of the measurements are flat, and creating a ball requires that to be the case. Now, I've defined this in a very simplistic way as the two positions you can find yourself in after you find this out. One is you deny the measurements of Earth, which just means you've got no Earth measurements. Doesn't matter if you're on a ball. If you want to deny elevation angle measurements of the stars, that's how the ball gets made. They're flat Earth measurements required to believe you're on a ball. Alternatively, you can accept that Earth is measured flat with elevation angles to the stars to create your ball to believe in. But Earth's still measured flat. I call that the rock and hard place. The rock being an acceptance of how Earth gets measured in all instances, flat, or a denial of the measurements of Earth because you don't like that creating the ball involves measuring Earth flat, so you want to deny the measurements. Well, that's called the hard place.
Love it. Absolutely love it. You've just kind of simplified it and kind of saved people a lot of time, which I massively appreciate what you've done there. You've kind of given everyone a little bit of a head start with it. So I massively appreciate that, Nathan. Thank you.
I've got to toddle on. Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh,
It's
Nathan,
been a pleasure having you, dude. Thank you very much. It's a first.
You've made my
It's been-
year. Absolutely made my year.
It's because you said
And,
you
yeah,
toddle off after I leave a chat. I normally leave a chat and then have a shower, make a cup of tea, but I'm definitely listening.
Oh, I don't know. I think because you're a very knowledgeable guy, and your own content is extremely scientific, and it's all based on empirical data and all of this, and that's not my. Like a lot of the time, we don't, and it's some of the stuff that we talk about on this channel, and some of the things, some of the characters that come on here, I just don't think that they're your cup of tea. So,
Oh, I do. I absolutely love it.
Please
No,
stick
there's a
around.
reason I'm tuning in, and it's because I love what you're doing. So don't get the wrong impression. Because when I'm on YouTube, I'll talk about things being empirical. Can I plug my show though to your audience? Is that okay?
yes, absolutely, mate.
Perfect. So weekdays, 2 p.m. UK time on the Nathan Oakley 1980 channel, I run a live show that anybody can join. So there's a public link like this show that I'm on now, like 007 show, where you can just join by clicking a link. I run that also in my show where if you want to challenge anything I'm saying on a daily basis, you can join. It's called Flat Earth debate. I've got over 2,000 live shows that I've done to date over the course of the last 10 years. It's all I've studied. It's all I cover. So if you're interested in the subject of flat Earth and how Earth is measured flat, feel free to tune in 2 p.m. UK time, weekdays, on the Nathan Oakley 1980 channel. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, dude.
Thank you very much, dude.
Have a
Nathan, if you want
beautiful
to, I'm pretty sure you've got a wrench. If you want to drop a link to your channel, just for those people that don't have wrenches,
I'll do exactly that.
so they can
I'll get
get in there.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Have a
Nathan.
great
No,
day,
thank
man.
you. Thank you again for having me.
Have a wonderful day and a wonderful way, mate.